recording.
Good. All right. We still have 90 seconds.
Wow, all the time in the world, Brian.
Just don't say anything that would get us to force us
I was
to,
trained on a guy that would be able to look for a song that he needed next while the jingle before the song plays.
Well,
But everyone else in the room had lost their fingernails from.
that's why you get paid the huge bucks, Brian.
Yeah,
Brian's got a private jet, limo.
he's a shooter.
Wow.
He's a shooter.
I gotta need to get to know you better.
News talk.
All right, I'll put my headphones on.
You're rolling, you said? Okay.
Where are you headed first? Common Core?
What's that?
Where are you headed first? Common Core? Or you-
Yeah, Common Core. Welcome. You're listening to the Renegade River Show. My name is Mike Hewitt, and in the studio with me today is Jim Riley. Welcome back.
Hey, good afternoon.
And with Jim and I is Tina Dupont, who is the founder of the Tea Party of West Michigan. Tina, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Hey, I'm excited to have you here, and I've got a whole bunch of things that I want to kick around, but I want to start with Common Core for a minute. We talked about it on the show before. In fact, I think I've had you on a couple times, but even we touched on it then. But where are we at now in the state legislature with Common Core? What's going on that topic?
Well, it is still in committee. It is still as bad as ever, and it needs to die. But until we get it out of committee, and then, well, hopefully it doesn't come out of committee, but if it does, it will go to the whole House, and then on to the Senate.
I have to tell you.
Wait, can I just ask one thing? Could
Sure.
you explain to those folks who don't live the life of politics what the heck Common Core is?
Sure. It is supposedly a state and governors association entity to bring all of the schools across the country in line with each other, so that they can better measure each other. Measure themselves against each other. There's testing to go along with it, and it's really not good because it's actually coming from the federal government, even though they try to say it's not.
So the idea is that every school in the country essentially will be using at first grade, for instance, all be using the same educational tools and books and things of that sort?
Well, they say not. They say it's just testing. However, everyone knows that if there's testing, the curriculum has to go along with it, or the kids won't pass the test. So basically, it's curriculum for the whole country at the same time.
So tell me, Tina, what one of the pushbacks I hear when I've been on this. First off, to Jim's point, very few people have an understanding of what Common Core is. That said, those few folks that are out talking about it and trying to promote it, what is the answer? What makes it bad? Other than it's the federal government, and I'm not in necessarily the greatest proponent of a powerful federal government, to say the least, but other than that, how would it negatively affect my grandchildren?
Well, whenever you have something that is controlled by the federal government, and let's be clear, the federal government has no right in our education. It's not constitutional for us to even have a federal Department of Education. However, we do, and they're heavy-handed. They will tell us they'll give us things that we don't want to teach, and we'll have to teach it. And if you control the children of a nation, you can control the nation eventually. So it's very scary. But on top of that, the data mining that goes along with this is really scary. Right now, through Power Schools, everything that's put on the computer, and right now in my kids' school, that's everything, including some of the parent information. All of that is accessible by Pearson, who is one of the biggest textbook manufacturers in the world, actually. And that's just a whole nother issue, is the textbooks that are coming out and some of the stuff that they suggest kids read and all.
That's kind of what I got out of it before when I first started trying to get my head around this concept, is that first it seemed like a really great mechanism for somebody to sell billions and billions of dollars of books, literally, that in many cases say the same thing that the other books did, but they got new covers on them. And of course the taxpayers are the ones picking up that bill, and kudos to the genius that figured out a new way to make himself a billionaire. That said, when I stand back and look at the actual results we're getting, tell me if I'm thinking wrong, because I would like to see a local school board that local citizens elect actually have control over what their children are being taught. And this seems to be another step further to remove citizens, more specifically to remove parents from that equation, and that's what causes me to be repulsed by that concept.
That's absolutely true, and in fact, it's, I think, intentionally so. They say that we can change some of the standards, however the tests won't be changed, so they'll still have to teach to those standards. And in order to get anything changed at all, pulled out of it or anything, it will have to go to DC now, instead of going to even the state Department of Ed or your local school. The local schools will have no control.
No, they won't. And the fascinating part about it is that it suggests that the children living in Seattle, Washington are faced with the same necessary learning foundations that children in Muskegon County are, or children in Grand Haven, or children in Detroit City. And the reality is that all of these folks have different issues and frankly different cultures that are not being recognized by this, which really in truth, if you read it, and I'm not using this word lightly, it's really preparing your students, parents, to be global citizens. And I hope you understand what I mean when I say that, because I'm using their words, not mine. Welcome to a global environment. And it goes along with the naivete that, oh, well, the people say, Mike, we're in a global economy now. But that's to suggest that we haven't always been in a global economy. And I say that because the founding fathers and the chuck wagons that went out west and everything else, we've always had a global economy. But to try to change our culture on such a fundamental level because of using these warm and fuzzy words, to me it's a little bit alarming.
Well, let me just jump in here, because I've heard the term. Now I have a little bit of an education as to what it's about. But the fact that we're talking about it, is this something that's a done deal that we're complaining about? Is this something that's coming and we might be able to change? What options do we have? Why are we talking about it?
It's kind of both. The State Board of Educations across the country and this Governors Association that not even every governor is a part of the states, determined this without even having the curriculum in their hands. They had not seen it. It wasn't even written. But they thought it sounded good. You know, they bought the sales pitch they got. So they all agreed to sign on, except for a couple of states. Now we're starting to see what it is, especially parents, and we're starting to balk at it. But now it's an uphill battle because it's already sort of here. I mean, a lot of the schools for 2 years now have been instituting parts of it. And there's also a lot of expense to it because all the testing is on computer, all the computers have to have the same software. Of course, the Gates Foundation and others are making lots of money on that because besides Pearson, Gates is really big in this. Bill and Melinda Gates, those Gates. So they're going to make a whole lot of money. Not that they need any more. I mean, I don't have a problem with people making a lot of money, but on the backs of children to use them as guinea pigs is a really bad idea. But we can reverse it. Right now, our Representative Tom McMillan in the House of Michigan is really fighting it hard. They've already defunded it just to stop it because everybody started catching on to what this was.
All right, so this is something that the states decide, or could an individual school district say, look, we don't need your test. We'll do something else.
They can do a little bit of that. However, I'm not sure how much leeway they have there because money's tied to it. Whenever the federal government does anything, they give you money because that's it's kind of like the noose, they wrap it around your neck so that you can't.
Well, so if Tom McMillan, who is, I believe, is he a Republican
yes.
Representative? He is attempting to get us a a waiver like the government is so good at giving?
I'm not sure exactly what it will be and how it will come out, but he's just trying to get us pulled out altogether.
Will we lose money?
I
I mean, is that the argument that's being made on some
I
areas?
imagine the money that was attached to it, that's something that we'd have to ask like Melanie Curtis or someone like that. I'm not sure.
Keep in mind, Jim, that this is supposedly not a federal process. It's going state by state. There are some states that have said absolutely not. And by the way, folks, it's not necessarily a Republican or a Democrat issue either, because there's people on both sides of the aisle that are very passionately in favor of it or against it. For instance, Governor Snyder has indicated his support for it. Amanda Price, who's a state representative down in the 89th district, has signaled her support for it. While on the other hand, you've got Tom McMillan that Tina just alluded to, that's very passionately against it. I'm very passionately
Well, are
against
Democrats as a group for this? Because Democrats, as a party, and certainly we have elected Democrats at both the state house and the state senate level, do they tend to be for this or against it?
It depends on how much they know. There are actual teachers that call themselves Democrats.
No, I'm talking about elected Democrats.
I don't know. That's a good question, because there haven't been enough votes. It hasn't even gotten out of committee,
Okay.
so we don't know where it's at.
Okay.
The legislature had no say whatsoever in this. It was just done by the school boards and the governors.
I will tell you to your question, Jim, that if you look state by state, those states that are passing on it, in fact, we seem to have lost Wi-Fi entirely, but those states that are passing on it are the ones that tend to be very conservative states, and the ones that are embracing it tend to be very, very liberal states.
Okay.
So I mean, if you're looking at outside the party line and just look to the ideologies, this is certainly not a conservative or a libertarian position whatsoever.
Well, I am always suspicious of the phrase, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. But anybody who reads the MEP scores, certainly in West Michigan, knows that our schools are a disaster. I mean, forget the fiscal disaster, forget the ridiculous tenure rules and the fact that the schools are spending money that they don't have and making promises to their employees that they cannot keep. But just the product of our school system, the ability to universally, and these are things that are universal throughout our country, where children ought to be taught how to read, how to write cogent paragraphs, and how to do reasonable arithmetic and have some sense of history. We know that isn't working today. How do you answer someone who says, look, here's something new, trying to address these ills. You folks are just against it, fair enough. What's your answer? Because right now, the system clearly isn't working for anybody.
Well, but there's a couple of things that I learned last weekend, as a matter of fact, about Common Core that are so much worse than what we have now. For instance, they are going down in the first, second, and third grades and teaching them things they taught them in later grades, where children aren't even capable of handling the processes they're talking about.
And this is the test that would be testing for these things, the federally administered
the
test.
curriculum to go with the tests that the kids will have to pass. And the problem is again, the money's tied to it. It's a way they think to tell who are the bad teachers, who are the good teachers, bad schools, good schools, that kind of stuff. So there will be some stick involved here. And another thing that they've done is taken, I believe it's Algebra 2 completely out, or maybe that's where they stop. So the kids aren't even prepared. If they want to go into an engineering school, they're going to have to take some remedial math or high school level math to get in before they can start their engineering studies in a college.
You know what's fascinating about the whole concept, if you step back away from getting into the nuts and the bolts of it, is that if you look at the trend results of school in general, public education, and you follow their line straight downhill from those folks born 1960, 62-ish through current, each year it goes down. Each year that we've further embraced national control versus local control, we've lost a little bit more actual education results. So skip all the ideology and the big government, little government, move away from that and say, what are we getting for just, let's look at the results. Each year it's worse. And the answer each year is, then we need to have more government and control. And I pause, I say, wait a minute, what are we thinking when when what we see as a result makes it worse, and their answer is, let's double down on it and make it even more worse.
That's what's happening.
That's really what's happening in
Yeah,
my
that
mind.
really
Well,
is.
and as you mentioned too, once you start looking at the specific curriculum, once you look at what is being tested and what is actually being brought in front of the students, then it's stomach turning. Do you happen to have? I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but do you happen to have any other specifics about things that they are being taught that parents might say, "Oh my gosh, I don't want my kid taught that."
A lot of the classic reading is gone. They're still in the suggested list, but so are a lot of new books that are, one in particular that was already being used in California is very sexually explicit, and the teacher that was using that one, it's in the list of suggested books to read in Common Core. She was having these students read these things out loud, and I wouldn't read it over the radio right now. It was bad. And so the problem is, what can sneak into here? We don't know anything, and they've taken out real classics.
Yeah, the irony to it when you drill down like that is that one of the complaints that folks like myself have, and I believe you also do, Jim, is that we've moved away from reading, writing, and arithmetic. The fundamental learning blocks that to me allow a person to have some cognitive thinking and to be able to actually benefit from higher education or go on to a successful career. We've moved away from that. The Common Core takes us even further from that. It removes our young a little bit further from practical math. It removes them a little bit further from fundamental reading skills, and it's more of the, to use the old term, the last time they were selling us a bill of goods, it moves us more they're doubling down on the rounded education concept. And as I used to quip, rounded education is the hole in the middle they've left. It used to be the reading, writing, and arithmetic that people don't have anymore. I don't know what kind of society we'll have if we've stripped ourselves of family in most quarters of the United States to a great degree, and we've watered down education to the point where we're vastly more worried about a rounded education, being a global citizen, than we are being able to do fundamental basic math.
Here's a couple more things. For instance, they're going to stop teaching cursive. Now, what do you know about our Constitution?
Cursive writing, you mean?
Yes.
Okay.
That is going to, these kids aren't going to be able to read those documents. Our historical documents of our country, they're not even going to be able to read them.
But an argument could be made, and I'm playing devil's advocate here, but an argument could be made that cursive is not something that is current. You're not going to be presenting any business proposals or any type of communication that requires cursive. And instead of teaching cursive, we're going to teach X that's going to be time better spent. Has that argument been made? Or are they just going to take a break and exercise and eat zucchini?
You know what, speaking of break, we're going to transition to a break, and folks, we will be right back in just a moment.
I had one other thing. I don't know.
Yeah. I gotta fire this commercial break out over there.
Okay, and let me turn this off here.
I don't know if we're done with Common Core, but there was one other thing that was really